Welcome to the Healers Café, the number one show for medical practitioners and holistic healers to have heart to heart conversations about their day to day lives while sharing their expertise for improving your health and wellness. Welcome to the Healers Cafe. Today I have with me Ken Blackman, and his organization basically is about sovereignty in connection, and he helps indecisive couples either commit fully or separate amicably without fear or regret. And then those who go on, he helps them craft a thriving, loving, fulfilling life partnership. So, I mean, that seems like a wonderful thing to do. You can't lose. So, give us a little bit about your background and how you ended up in this field.
Yeah. So in my 20s, I was a software engineer at Apple,
Right.
and I was relatively successful, like most of my life was I had friends, I had some spending cash, I did fun things, but I was terrible when it came to relationships, just awful. Like I was bad in every way that you can think of. I was codependent, I was misogynistic, I had nice guy syndrome. I I I I was whiny and needy as a boyfriend. I was bad in bed, like you name it. I was just not, I didn't know what I was doing. And I needed the kind of help that I now offer to other people. Like I needed like support and coaching and mentoring and like how to have a healthy, intimate, mature, like fulfilling relationship with another human being. And that was so transformative for me that thought this is the work that I want to do. I want to help other people have what I'm now experiencing with women. Um, and so I left my career and like studied with my mentors and like like just did a deep dive into what it takes for people to have great relationships. And I've never looked back. This is what I've been doing full time for
Right.
25 years now.
That's a long time. If you were going to have any doubt, you would have stopped by now.
Yeah.
So yeah. So what? I mean, what does it take to know that you should get out of a relationship? Let's start with that, because I think a lot of people, I mean, I have no direct couple relationship, counseling, but 30 years working with people, a lot of health issues come from their relationships, right? From the things they can't deal with, the stress that it has, the unresolved stuff, what they don't dare say, not standing up for themselves, like a whole bunch of things that give stress and affects your health. So what have you found are maybe the main things that where people they have a sense they should be apart, but they can't do it? What are the things that hinder this?
Yeah. I mean, wow, I could go in so many different
Yeah,
directions
I'm
because
sure you can.
like there's so many. Well, let me start here. There's probably a lot to talk about, but let me start here. There's chemistry, which is, like attraction and how it good feels good to be with the other person. And then there's like connection and intimacy, which is your ability to be yourself.
Right. Mhm.
And um, so a lot of people who have chemistry, what they find is that it feels really good, and then they're really protective, like they don't want to say something that's gonna kill the vibe, they start to present them their best self, and they're doing a lot of management to have it feel good. Do you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, yeah.
And then there's intimacy and connection where really what feels good is, can you be yourself with this human being? Like, are you able to be yourself? And hopefully you have both. Because if you have chemistry, like if you're going to be in a long-term relationship, it people don't really understand the transition from we're dating where you're on your best behavior to what it takes to create a life partnership, like a real this is the person you want to do life with. And
Right.
so if you haven't transitioned into you can really, really be yourself with this person. If you're still like trying to protect the vibe, if you're still trying to like, juice the chemistry, that after a while, that's going to be tiring. And when
Right.
people say, I just like they've been in the relationship for a while and they kind of feel like they need some time alone. They need to
Mm.
get away, all that stuff. That's because they have a relationship where they can't actually be themselves.
Right. Right. Yeah. Makes
And
sense.
so ideally what you want is to be able to have both, but that takes courageous honesty. Like
Mm.
think about the things that you are most afraid to share with your partner because you're afraid, like the things that you are most afraid if they knew this, they would want to leave. That's the stuff that you need to share in order to get into this deeper territory where you're genuinely, truly connected with this person. This person has your back. You know that they've chosen you, not some facade. Like
Right.
this is, you've chosen each other to be like your most important person in your life. You don't want to spend the rest of your life with someone that you have secrets from, or
No,
that you have to put on a mask with, or that you have to hide something from. So it takes this very courageous level of honesty to get into that territory. But we all hunger to have that kind of person,
yeah.
that person who's really our person. So I
Yeah.
think that's
I mean,
one of
it
the
makes sense because if ultimately, if you can't be yourself, it's just too much work, you know. Or if you're on eggshells, or I mean, I've been in a few relationships, so I can tell, when finally I'm comfortable, I'm myself. I do, sometimes weird things, but it's me, and it's totally fine, you know. And I think that's like, it's so much nicer than, yeah, than that sort of in between. But then you also need the chemistry. So how do you like, so let's say you're starting new with somebody and
yeah.
you get along, the vibe is right, there's a lot of people that are faster now to be more themselves. It's becoming more popular than it was. But how do you explain chemistry? And does chemistry disappear? Does it, in your mind, how does it work? Is it something to also work on, or is it always there? Or can you
You know,
find
I yeah, there's this belief that, like a good set, like people crave variety or that they crave novelty, especially in the bedroom. I haven't found that to be the case at all. I actually think when you're really connected with someone and honest with someone and you can talk about things, you can actually craft a love life that's better than what you can find. You can craft it to be better than what you can find. So the example that I give is imagine a couple who decide that they're going to have dinner together a couple of nights a week. They're going to make dinner together and just enjoy a meal together a couple of nights a week. So, you know, first you have to figure out what's your dietary restrictions, what do you love to eat, what do you love to eat? And they may not perfectly match up, but you figure out how do we make a meal where both people are getting up totally happy with the meal, right? That's totally
right?
possible. Then, you've got your meals dialed in, then you start to experiment with different cuisines. You get better, you get your flow in the kitchen, like one person's really good cooking the steak, the other one's really good, roasting the asparagus, you learn, you start experimenting with different flavors and different, like, well, let's try this. We haven't made this recipe. You start to play with recipes and you start to like make recipes your own. But each time you're talking about the experience, you're saying what you like, what you don't like, you're like really relating over the meal, right? You're not just like picking a recipe in silence, cooking in silence, you know,
Right.
eating in silence. You're talking, you're relating
Yeah.
over what's enjoyable. So after a few years, those meals are going to be dialed in because
Right.
you've been working together, you know. So
Yeah.
your love life can be that way too. So
Mhm.
that's how I think about it. Like the best of what relationship can offer, the best chemistry, the best juice, the best, you know, the best of it is when you're with someone who knows you so well. They know what feels good to you. They know what you
Right.
enjoy.
Mhm.
They know you so well. They can anticipate. They can like flirt. They can like, there's this dynamic between two people who know each other really well that I think is the best of what's possible. Not novelty,
Mm.
not, you know,
Right.
variety.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, no, I would concur. But it's true that it's really a belief out there. Not, I don't think, I mean, I don't know, maybe that's not true. No, I'll take that back. I was gonna say, I've heard it more from men, but I'm now hearing it also from women who start to believe that that's true. Because so many are not, planning to really settle down, not have kids, all this business, so they think it's a freedom, but I don't know that that's really freeing. It's more freeing to really get to know yourself fully and be with another, so,
yeah.
you know,
There's this amazing quote from Joni Mitchell,
oh yeah.
and she picked it up from a magazine article that she read. But basically, if you want the same experience again and again and again, keep seeing other people. If you want infinite variety, stay with one person.
Mm.
And the reason she says that is because when you first get with someone, you know, you've got your shtick, you've got your moves, you got, you know, like the stories you haven't told them yet, you know, you like all this stuff that's new, right? And
Mhm.
pretty soon you've gone through
Right.
all your best moves, all your best stories, you know, and at that point, you know each other and you actually have to break into new territory together. And you have to
Right.
talk about stuff you've never talked about before. You have to like get to know
Yeah.
each other at a new level. Like that's when the relationship begins. The really good stuff
Yeah.
begins after you've gone through all of your tricks and your shticks and and then the possibility of something new that you've never experienced before is possible.
Mm. No, yeah, I would think that that is true. I mean, I've experimented so many things based on belief systems, when I saw that, so many people so-called cheated. I thought, well, I'll never be in a relationship like that because I don't believe in that. So I'm gonna call it an open relationship, and therefore it's allowed, and therefore it's not cheating anymore, and
Yeah.
and in some way, theoretically, at the time, many years ago, 40 plus, but anyway, um, it felt completely right. It felt like freedom, but it wasn't freedom. In the end, it didn't feel that, yeah, it's like you couldn't go further with one, even though you might be more attached to one person. It's like, no, why am I not developing all of it? And and why am I not addressing that original feeling or that fear, that I would be cheated on or whatever it is that, you know, yeah,
Yeah, it's funny you should bring that up. I practiced like being in open relationships for years myself.
yeah.
And what we liked about it was I'm not going to tell you what not to do with someone else so, in order to have what you want with me.
What would your life be like if you were pain-free? If you were one of the millions who suffer from chronic pain, the thought of just one day without it may seem impossible. This is often because conventional medicine tends to fall short in the treatment of pain, opting to prescribe pills or recommend surgery rather than getting to the root cause of the problem. But if you are suffering with emotional or physical pain, there is hope. Join the founder and CEO of Bowen College, Manon Bolliger, live online for your body-mind reboot. Learn how to listen to your symptoms and get to the root cause of your pain. Plus, be trained in basic Bowen therapy moves so that you can reboot your body for optimal health. You don't have to live in pain. You can heal. Stop the pain pill cycle by visiting www.yourbodymindreboot.com to learn more and to register.
Like, I'm not gonna, you don't have to limit what you have with someone else in order to have everything. Like, I care about how the two of us relate. Do you know what I mean? I care about- So there was this great freedom and not limiting each other and not shrinking each other in order to have something. And what I found was that over time, there got to, you know, if you're really developing with one person, you get to a place where it's like, oh, this, I don't really want anyone else. Like I'm really liking what we have at home. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't feel drawn to anyone else because I'm really digging what we've got. That's where you can get to with that. You know what I mean? Like, it isn't building a moat around yourself.
No,
so that
no,
nobody
exactly.
else
No.
can get in. It's crafting something with someone that just feels amazing.
Yeah. Well, in where I'm at now, it's actually the most freeing of all relationships, and I've been in this one for 20 years, and it's we talk completely freely, and I'm totally free, but there's absolutely no desire by either of us, you know, but there's the freedom to, and it's sort of, it's almost like there's so much fun developing, and like you say, new territory, things that, wow, I haven't had to look at this situation, or what it's like to deal with someone in pain, or what it's like to deal with trauma resurfacing. Like, you can go so deep and learn so much, like both partners, right? Then it's like, why would you want to, you know, it's not even fun. But when I think about it, oh, you know, it's fun to meet new people a little bit, and then, but it doesn't really, like, I'd rather go back and be home. You know, that's the feeling now. You know?
That's how I feel too.
It's interesting.
I mean, I'm gonna spend the rest of my life getting to know my wife. Like, that is a lifelong process of getting to know this person.
Yeah.
And letting her see more parts of myself, and you know,
right, because you're allowed to discover it. That's the other part, right? You know, it's like, what's it like having grandchildren? What kind of grandparent are you? You know, do you prefer, you know, traveling or spending time there? How committed? Like, you know, who comes first? You know, all these things that, you know, you kind of, you know, we were always smiling at each other going, wow, I'm looking forward to having the night with nobody around now. It's like, how weird, you know, because I'm such a family person. I would never ever have thought that I would actually be, you know, happy completely.
wonderful, right?
It's ecstatic. Yeah, but I like the idea that when you're in something that's not quite right, you know, I mean, there's all the blame games and all that, but let's say you have a higher consciousness and you know that it's not about that. It's just partially you're not being who you are. Yeah. And so there's triggers, something else is attracting you that maybe you're working through, but you don't want to work through all the way. So it's stuck. The relationship isn't growing. It's how do you part that amicably? So what is it that you see that when people do it properly, what happens for you?
Yeah, which is interesting because, you know, some couples that I work with do end up breaking up. And what's funny is they still send me, you know, referrals because they're so grateful for what they learned and having made a decision that they feel good about. And I can tell you what it sounds like. I'll tell you what it sounds like when you're
That sounds
breaking up
good.
probably. It sounds like this. I totally see you. I totally get you. I understand what it is that you're asking for. And I don't think there's anything wrong with what you're asking for. It's just out of my range, or it's not something that it's not something I want to do. And I feel like you understand me, I don't think there's any, you understand what it is I'm asking for and what it is I want. And I respect that you don't want it's out of your range to give me what I'm asking for, or you don't want that. So, um, I have regret that we've come to this impasse. I love you dearly, and I am mourning the 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 life that we've had. I'm also celebrating
Mm.
the life that we've had, and frankly, I feel a sense of relief along with all that we've come to a decision, and we're deciding to move on with our lives. And I'm excited for my next chapter. I'm looking, I hope you have your next chapter is going to be good. And so that's what it can sound like when you really have realized it's not a good match, is you both understand each other, you both understand what the other one wants, and you know that it's not what's going to work for you.
Mhm. But I mean, with that, both have to be at a fairly conscious level, right? Because
Yeah.
if I look at earlier breakups, I can't say either way, I pay for my part of being unconscious as the other, but I think it's yeah, it's like my questions would be, well, couldn't I compromise that, or couldn't I change that? Is that such a big deal? I totally get it. Why can't I blah blah blah, right? You know, isn't that stuff something, at least, from one of the partners, that do you see that a lot, or the sense that
You do, but the thing is, like, this kind of gets into the question of whether a relationship is, quote, worth it, which is a whole topic unto itself.
I
Like, what
see?
makes a
Okay.
relationship worth
Yeah.
it? You know what I mean? And I do see people trying and trying and trying and trying, um, and bending themselves into a pretzel. Do you know what I mean? Like pretzeling themselves to try and make it work.
Yeah.
But that is getting further and further and further away from, that's more addiction than it is love. That's more codependence than it.
Codependency, yeah. Yeah, no, I guess that's a good point, yeah.
Yeah.
When you're constantly bending, it's like you're too afraid to just say no, whatever it might be. And no, I don't want to move across the universe, or or I have children here, or whatever the story might be, that are a value system significant enough, right?
If someone believes that they are unlovable,
Mhm.
it's going to be very scary to leave a relationship.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
If someone understands that they are lovable and that they are worthy, and that
Yeah.
there's plenty of opportunity to find someone else. Like, if they like themselves, if they love
Yeah.
them, they don't have a hard time believing that someone else can like them and love them.
Right.
Then it becomes easier to say, I love what we have here, but there's something that I want more that I'm not getting here. And so this isn't good enough. This isn't enough from, like, the good here isn't good enough for me to want to stay and compromise this thing that I actually hunger for that I'm not getting here.
Right. Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've got to get there. Yeah. But that's what I mean. It takes a certain consciousness to
Yeah.
realize that you're not in that it could be a codependent relationship, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
have you ever dealt with codependent relationships that
Oh,
the one of them might be super attached to making it work, and the other one is potentially ready to move on? How do you deal with them?
well, it's funny. So, there's this talk these days about attachment styles, right?
Mhm.
And so there's anxiously attached, and often someone who's anxiously attached will be in a relationship with someone who's avoidantly attached. For some
Yeah,
reason, that combination happens a lot.
yeah,
But the truth is, on a practical level, the anxiously attached one is actually the greater flight risk. They're the ones that are like so well, literally anxious that about whether this relationship's going to work and trying so hard. They're actually usually the one that calls it first and says, this isn't working for me.
oh,
So that finding really surprised me, because you would think,
yeah,
you know, no, the person who has the most fear of abandonment is more likely to leave than the avoidant one. The avoidant one just has their walls up,
right.
you
Yeah,
know.
I guess it makes sense, yes.
But usually when the breakup happens, it's the anxiously attached one who does the breakup,
Hmm.
because they can't stand the indecisiveness. They can't stand the partner having their walls up. They can't stand not having connection. They can't stand their partner running away. They just get fed up with it.
Right, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it does actually make sense. If we can break it down a bit more, that it would be more of a trigger. Yeah, interesting. So, we have like 5 minutes left, and I realize I've just been pounding you with questions. Is there something you would like to share right off of, and then also how people can get hold of you? How do you work? Do you have any,
Yeah.
books that people can get, or articles, or how do people find out about you? Just maybe, take the last
Yeah,
one.
yeah. Um, they're like, I could talk for 18 or 20 hours about something, but I think given what we've talked about so far, I want to leave your audience with this thought. When your life is good, when times are good, when things are going well in your life in general, it's really easy to be in love and have it feel wonderful. And then when things get hard, when life itself is challenging, like I live in Chicago right now, and it's challenging to be in Chicago right now.
Oh, yes, I can imagine.
So whatever it is, if when your life is challenged,
Yeah,
you are going to learn something about your relationship, because either you're going to be thinking, this is really a difficult life situation, and I am so glad to be going through this with you. I am so glad I have you by my side during these challenges times. Or your partner is going to feel more burdensome, like they're going to feel like,
yeah,
wow, I have all this stuff I'm trying to deal with in my life, and now I have to deal with you too. Like, you know, it could feel like your partner is a burden, and you'd be better off without him. So that tells you something about the health and vitality of the relationship. And so what you want to do, everything we've been talking about, is what it takes to build that relationship, the kind of relationship that feels like times are really tough, and I am so grateful I'm not alone. I'm so grateful
yeah,
we're doing this together. All the stuff we've been talking about is for that kind of relationship.
yeah. Well, it's a really good point, because, I mean, there's always stressful periods and there's general stressors in life. But I think to many people, the last 4 or 5 years has been very stressful.
Very
And
stressful.
it's brought some people apart because of fundamental differences in belief, and then, if you're the tin hat foil person, or the oddball that whatever stands up, um, it's going to bring you a hell of a lot closer if your partner is on the same page.
Right.
And you're like, thank God, there's peace. Like, otherwise you feel like you're half crazy, right? So I think this can really, it can make the relationship even closer, because it's a tough time to stand up in, Yeah, interesting.
Now, as far as as far as how to reach me, I'll give you a URL to my blog.
Sure.
You know, like this is where you can really read more about me, and you can find links to reach out to me if you want support or coaching. So it's kenblackman.medium.com. kenblackman.medium.com.
Great. And then we'll have it also written on the website and everything so people can get hold of you. Well, thank you. That's a lot of information in a in a short half an hour. But I think we covered quite a bit. I'm sure there's so much more. But
Thank you so much for having me on. It's been a great
yeah,
time.
no, I find this, fascinating, and all of these aspects impact health, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Thank you for joining us at the Healers Café. If you haven't already done so, please like, comment, and subscribe with notifications on, as I post a new podcast every Wednesday with tons of useful information and tips for natural healing that you won't want to miss.